right. Welcome back to the Partnership Mastermind Podcast, where we unpack what actually works in B2B SaaS partnerships. Today, we're diving into the art of ISV partnerships with someone who's been in the trenches, Dave Rogers, ISV Partner Manager at Akeneo, former Seismic Partner Leader and Mastermind alumni, and now one of our newest Mastermind instructors. Dave, absolutely great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I'm excited.
Amazing.
It's going to be fun.
Let's do it, man. Cool. Well, let's kick things off with what we call our Fast Five segment, right? So it's just 5 quick hitting questions that's designed to help you ease into the conversation and give our audience an opportunity to get to know you a bit better. You ready for that?
Sounds good.
All right, let's do it. First thing that comes to mind. All right, first up, you're up before sunrise for that F45 class. What's the one part of your morning routine that you'll never skip?
Oh, man. I think my next boot camp could maybe be how to do a great morning routine. I love the mornings, Chris. So yeah, I think my favorite part is that F45 class. It's not just me, but my wife and I, we go together. So we start the day with that workout, 6:30 in the morning, and then come home and grab some protein smoothies and take our dog for a walk. So we get some sunshine, get the dog a little exercise, and it's a great way to start the day.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Before our daughter came into the world, that was our exact morning routine as well. Now, before my daughter's up, the mornings are even more precious to me, so I have that alone time. So I think that's a great regimen. Cool. Next up for you, Dave. What's the funniest or strangest thing you've ever seen dropped into a partner Slack channel?
I've never seen anything that wild, but I like creating a culture of celebration in a partner channel. So sometimes I'll try to prompt people with, hey, here's this cool thing that just happened. Drop your favorite like celebration dance GIF or something like that. And I find that those can be pretty creative and fun.
I love that. Yeah, I think that's cool. I've seen some wild things in some shared Slack channels, some dark stuff where one time a partner didn't know that they were commenting in our shared partner channel, and they were bashing us a little bit, and they accidentally posted that in the shared Slack channel. It ended up being fine, but it was just one of those, like, it was up for hours, and so that was
like the reply all of
yeah, exactly,
the email
exactly.
days.
Cool. All right, next up, what's an early signal that a potential new ISV partner is really going to be a long-term fruitful partner? So what are some of the early day signals that gives you confidence that they're worth pursuing further?
I think when you hear a customer tell a great story about the value of the integration, that is the signal that this is going to be a good partnership, because there's value, there's technology value that's supporting it. And then if they are talking about enablement, I think that's the next sign, because I think enablement is like a critical piece of getting the playbooks and the things that you create together applied out into the field. So if they start talking about enablement, I'm like, okay, they're going to be good.
I love that. I love that the first thing you said was focusing on the customer. We just interviewed Corey Snyder, who's well known in the partnership space, and we talked about exactly that. And if you're tasked for finding your first few, say, integration partners, as an example, one of the easiest places to look is within your existing customer base. Also sifting through your sales team's discovery calls, looking for things like, hey, how did you hear about us? And if a particular partner or an integration keeps coming up and you don't have a relationship with them, that's a great place to start, because to your point, Dave, there's already a proof point that there is value being delivered to that mutual customer. So that is one of the arguably one of the most important ingredients for substantiating a longer term partnership. So I'm glad that you called that out. Sweet. All right. Third question in the Fast Five is, what is your favorite filter combo in Crossbeam when you're hunting for those golden ticket accounts? Walk us through. Let's just say you've got this fresh, big new ISV partner. They've got plenty of customers, strong ICP overlap. Walk us through your mental exercise of the filters that you're applying to take a otherwise unmanageable big list down to one where you have strong conviction on.
I love that. I do that so often. I was thinking about I as a North America partner manager, one of the first filters is America. And
Yep.
then what are the business segments? What are the verticals? What are the industries? I use all of those filters so that I could narrow down to what are we like really going after? Is there a certain segment of the market where we both are like really strong together? Doing some of the analytics on the joint customer list is a great way to see where you already have that sweet spot. But then in discovery conversations with that partner, to think about where's your roadmap, where do you want to go together, what are you aiming at? That then helps you click the right filters and narrow down. Another thing I think I love to do, it's one of my favorite plays in Crossbeam, is when I'm going to an event. And it's not just about like the one partner, but I think this is a hack that not everybody knows. If you're just thinking about, oh, I'm going to this conference or an event, and you just go, it's overwhelming how many people are there. But if you take that attendee list to the conference, turn that into a partner in Crossbeam, apply some of those same types of filters based on, what you're
Yep.
measured on, and then you could narrow down to, a couple hundred attendees at a conference to maybe 10 to 20 that are really valuable to your company, and talk to your partner there and say, hey, this is somebody I'd really like to be introduced to and talk to while I'm there. Get a lot more value out of a conference that way.
Yeah, that's a really scrappy one. Big fan of that. Anyone can steal that one. And to add on to some of the great contributions Dave had on the Crossbeam side, two of the other ones I really like. One is AE overlap. So let's just say your organization has 10 AEs, so to speak. We all know that some AEs are really difficult to work with and quite annoying, candidly. And then some of your AEs are like partner friendly. They've won deals with you. They're fully bought into partners. So when I'm doing account mapping and I'm looking at, say, active deals on our side or net new prospects, I'm actually filtering on specific AEs at my own company, which should be ported over into Crossbeam via CRM integration. And I'm actually removing any accounts that are owned by the quote unquote bad apple AEs. And let's just be honest, those exist, because I know that if I include them in my target list, chances are when push comes to shove, the AE in particular is not going to be supportive, right? So I'm actually a big fan of applying as many filters as I can to a partner's account list, removing AEs that aren't a good fit. To your point, geographically applying filters like North America. But I think there's traditional variables that you want to filter on, but there's also some like nuanced, privileged information type things, anecdotes that you can apply in your filters as well, such as which AEs are going to work with me versus which ones aren't. Does that resonate with you, Dave? Just like getting really specific, because again, if you get a list of say 10,000 or 1,000, maybe you can only realistically manage 50 or so. So you have to be ruthless in applying all the right filters to get down to a list that's actually worth pursuing.
Yeah, I like that. And, in addition to that, I always ask my partners to share their account owner names. And I think that
100%.
adds to that ability to look at where there's strong overlap between my AEs, that are really strong with partners, and the AEs on the other side, as well as something I always try to do. The reason I ask for that, and I think they typically share that information, is because I want to bring value to a co-sell call. So if one of their AEs is joining a call to support us on an opportunity, and whether I have or haven't met that AE, I want to run some reports to see how I might be able to help support them in opportunities that they are in, or accounts they're trying to get into. And I think that builds quick trust and rapport when they see that you're not just showing up asking for something, but you're coming to the meeting trying to give value to them as well.
Yeah, I love that play. And as a add on to that, when you are trying to facilitate co-sell, which we're going to talk more about today, if you can expose in Crossbeam who your AEs are per account, and you can get your partner counterpart to do the same, well, then what you can actually do is you can create these reports where you're overlapping your prospects and open ops with your partner's open ops and prospects, and you can actually isolate, okay, where's the biggest overlap between AEs? It's like, okay, Stacy on our side has 13 overlaps with Joe on the other side. like they're working 13 of the exact same accounts, right? Well, they should know each other. They should be in a room together talking, mapping out their deals. And maybe of those 13 deals, maybe only 3 of them are really worth co-selling based on XYZ details. But that's awesome. That's 3 legit at-bats. So I'm a big fan of, in a co-sell environment, finding the AEs on both sides that have the biggest overlap in active accounts that they're chasing, because chances are 1 or 2 of them are really a good candidate to test co-selling on. So I'm glad you brought that up.
I learned that play from you on a webinar you did last year, and set it up. That's a brilliant play, and I hope as we get into the conversation, that same thing happens. That people hear some plays like, oh, that's a cool idea. I could do that.
I mean, that's I'm glad you said that, David. That's literally the purpose of this podcast, is to cut out the fluffy BS that exists in the ecosystem and really give people tactical plays. And speaking of which, the final quick 5 question for you is, what's one thing partner managers can stop doing today if they really want to be successful in co-selling motions? Which is to say, perhaps what is the number one thing that's holding partner managers back in trying to stand up a co-sell motion? You can take it either way.
Yeah, I mean, this might seem a little elementary, but early on in my partner management, I was so excited about all the overlaps in Crossbeam, and thought that, boy, I could just go after all these prospects that are, that overlap with my partner's customer or something like that. And I quickly learned that not all overlaps equal value, that you need to layer in more intent data and other filters to narrow that down. And so I think my advice to newer partner managers would be, don't get overwhelmed by the overlaps, but think critically about what other data sources can strengthen the signals so that you're narrowing down to the right ones.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, David. We're a big fan of the show on kind of this concept of slow is steady and steady is fast, which is to say that we all exist in these like startup environments where speed is everything. But there are certain instances where you really need to slow down, right? To make sure that you understand exactly what's what before you get into execution mode, right? So I like how you framed it of like, hey, look, it can be overwhelming. It can be easy to have shiny object syndrome, essentially, when you get into Crossbeam, you see all this rich data that you have. But if you're not careful, you can be chasing way too many things and ultimately feel busy, but ultimately not have much of an impact. So really slowing down, to do research, before you commit to accounts formally, check with your sales team as an example, get a pulse check, because you don't want to pursue deals that are already looking good as an example, right? Because it's just a waste of your time. So I like the concept of kind of slowing down, doing your homework. Just as much as the marketing team should be really careful in building, say, an account-based marketing list of accounts to go after. And the more time you spend on getting that list right, the more conviction you have that once you actually start your engagement, for every lead that you get is probably a good fit, right? Because you get what you ask for.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right, cool. That was the Fast 5. So thanks for teeing us up. Now we're going to get into a few fun segments. And we always start each interview by understanding a bit of the guest's origin story, because none of us went to, college to get a bachelor's of partnerships. We all have pretty interesting backgrounds. And so let's talk a little bit about your entry point, from nonprofit to tech. You spent, a decade effectively building up leaders in the nonprofit world before ever touching SaaS, right? So I'm curious, like, what skills from that part of your career are still showing up in your work today? And ultimately, how did that kind of get you started in the partnership world?
Yeah. Thanks for saying that. I love a origin story. And it's a shame that there's no partnerships major in colleges. Maybe there will be soon. Maybe that's what maybe there'll be,
Exactly.
Harvard will be coming your way asking for. But I spent the first decade of my career at Boston University as a director of a student organization, and I thought that was an incredible training ground for what I do today. I don't think a day goes by that skills aren't being leveraged from that experience, and I had to wear a lot of different hats in that role, and so being a leader where I had to recruit, train, and lead a staff team, as well as a student leadership team, as well as a broader organization of around 75 students, that I was studying leadership principles and reading leadership books all the time. And I think that informs the way I show up at work, in opportunities to lead and bring influence, whether it's in a individual one-on-one or conversation, or with a partner or in a sales engagement, or being a good follower, being on a team and knowing the impact of attitude and um, and how to engage in healthy conflict over ideas and things like that, that I just think help me show up well as a teammate. And then, fundraising, developed a lot of skills in understanding how important vision and value are in sales and partnerships. Leading weekly events or regional conferences, and retreats taught me about event marketing and and recruiting, and then working in directly with students and partners, um, taught me about interpersonal communication and as well as public speaking. And I learned how to, what a couple of things that I live that I always want to be growing in is becoming a better and better question asker. And um, and I think that served me well in, roles that I've had since then in sales and partnerships, to be genuinely curious about people and about what they care about, and making sure that I authentically and genuinely am showing up with those things in mind. So I think like the principles I try to live by is curiosity, trust, and joy. And
Mm.
all those things were cultivated in that decade.
I love that. I mean, knowing you as much as I do, you certainly lead by example and embodying those principles on the daily, which is great. And I love the way you walked us through your experience in terms of transferability, because candidly, it can be quite intimidating to navigate career transitions. And as an example, breaking into partnerships can seem so non-intuitive and can seem like there's this huge barrier. But hopefully, anyone listening who maybe isn't yet in a partnerships role but is considering it, or even any transition of any type, maybe you want to transition out of partnerships. Hopefully, Dave's honest account there forces you and helps you think critically about, okay, what are the existing skills I have now, and how might that translate in a different functional area, such as partnership? So, this introspective exercise that you can go through it as an individual to say, okay, what are my skills? Okay, maybe I'm really organized, right? Or maybe I'm really good with numbers and data. It's like, okay, well, that's a good starting point. Where might that be useful and impactful, and in what industry? I would encourage you to take a look at that and use Dave's account as a good example. So thanks for sharing that, Dave.
Yeah,
Cool.
thanks.
So next up, let's keep it moving. Then you get into SDR type situation, and then you move from, say, SDR to partnerships at Seismic, I believe. Curious, like, when was that aha moment when you knew, okay, partnerships, this is my lane, right? We all have that different story. For me, that aha moment, as an example, was I love working at my own company and learning everything about that. But by partnering with other companies, I felt like it was like I got to work for other companies as well, in a way. And I got to like get exposure to different ecosystems. Like I was partnering with like Google, Amazon, Meta. And I'm like, wow, like I'm getting exposure to the best tech companies. To me, that was like my big aha moment, where I was like, wow, my exposure is like on steroids relative to, say, if I was a sales rep and I'm more of a closed type role. So curious what your aha moment was.
Yeah, I remember it so vividly. I was at the all hands event at Seismic in San Diego, and the VP of partnerships was giving a presentation about how their team works with the rest of the go-to-market org. And she had a salesperson up there giving personal examples of using Crossbeam and working with partners to create opportunities, um, and then close deals faster. And I beelined it over to that VP of partnerships and said, how can I start doing that as a BDR? And I was already working pretty strategically with my AEs. I think they saw that, the age and experience I had and the kind of the relational approach, strategic and relational approach I already brought to business development really lent itself well to that play. And so I immediately started connecting with partners and learning how to incorporate that into um, business development. That got noticed by Seismic and brought me onto the team. And it just, like you said, it was just this, like, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I felt really fortunate, coming from a
Yeah.
different industry and being like, I didn't even know partnerships existed. And like
Yep.
within a year, I figured out like this is exactly the lane that is like what I'm wired for. So I was really excited, feel really blessed to have found that.
Well, well, thanks for sharing that, Dave. And we hear a lot of stories just like that of especially like SDRs and BDRs just noticing signals and then not being passive but actually acting on them. We had Alexis Petrikos, VP of Partnerships at Chili Piper, who's really famous on LinkedIn, and his story was similar. He's like, hey, I was an SDR, I was trying everything, and eventually I realized that if I outbounded accounts that had high partner overlap, then those are the high success rates. So I started crushing it there, and then I got noticed by the partnership team, and then I was able to convert into like full-time partner managers. So anyone listening, maybe you're in BDR, SDR role or otherwise, if you see what your partnerships team is doing and you want to get involved, like, ask the right questions, talk to the right people, stand out by asking those questions. And if you can get an opportunity, then that's your start. Right. So I think Dave's story there is a good kind of translation there. One of the next questions on this segment to close it out on kind of your entry point is we love to ask guests like, okay, what was your entry point? But then what was kind of your like biggest humbling moments or biggest hard lessons? Right. So for myself, it was, I didn't realize how important it was for me to lean in to building cross-functional relationships, right? With sales, customer success, management level, product engineering, finance. And it took me way too long to like really wrap my head around how important that was. I had this egocentric mindset, I guess, of like, if I just crush my role, I'll get noticed and people will want to work with us, right? But that was a flawed approach. So I know for you, you've said that, as an example, hard work doesn't always equal impact, right? So maybe that's the version you want to give. But the question for you is, what was kind of your first big, oh shit moments where it's like, this is either a mistake I made or this is a really tough learning that I need to figure out if I'm going to really be successful in this type of job?
Yeah. It was Q3 at Seismic. I had been working really hard. I took on extra partnerships because some people had left the team. And so I was just sponging up as fast as I could all the information about the partners I was working with um, and engaging as many like co-sell activities as I could. And what I was neglecting was some of the documentation of what work I was doing. I was moving
Right.
so fast from one thing to the next. And it was like a week could go by and it was almost a blur. And I got to the end of the quarter and it was just so simple. It was like boiled down to on this slide, based on these KPIs, like what was the impact? And it was like this moment of like a humbling moment of, oh my gosh, I feel like I've added so much value, but was I not like tracking and like focused on the things that matter to this CRO that's going to be, looking at this slide. And so that taught me an important lesson about alignment and making sure that, I'm really mindful of what the business is measuring and how my team is measuring that and how I'm documenting the work I'm doing, especially with those KPIs in mind, but also documenting the other work that I know is really valuable, but maybe doesn't show up on that slide. So that there's a broader story of value that I could present. And it isn't just a blur.
Yeah. Well, I'm really glad you said that, Dave. And any partner manager listening, Hopefully you take credence to that concept of like documentation, which, as you know, Dave, is my love language. We talk a lot about it in the mastermind courses, and I drill down on it. But especially nowadays, where job security is a hot topic right now, with AI kind of increasing expectations of our productivity and causing companies to think that they can do away with some rules. So one of the best ways you can maximize your job security, other than just being a high performer, is showing that you're a high performer. And this, you may ask, like, well, shouldn't my company know better? Technically, yes, right? Any good leadership team or company should have instruments in place to like know who's good and who's not from a performance perspective. But really the job is on you to like storytell, lead with data. And the documentation is one of the best ways you can do that. And the way to think about it is, if you were to stumble upon your CRO or CEO tomorrow and they said, hey, tell me what your impact is here, right? You should be able to give a good answer verbally, right? But more importantly, to Dave's point, you should be able to say, oh, let me show you, right? And you should be able to pull up a right dashboard or pull up some playbook or pull up something, whether it's on your CRM or your business insights tool or some wiki like Notion. You should be able to show them something, right? And if you're listening right now and you're like, well, crap, I couldn't do that today. That's okay. You just need to know where you're at, and you need to get cracking on getting that going, because what gets measured gets managed is incomplete without what gets documented gets done. And so documenting your work makes it so much easier to iterate and improve a process, but also for your own job security and advancement perspective, it actually helps you communicate what the heck you're doing and showcasing that impact. Does that resonate with you, Dave?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I have a recent example. I went to a conference recently and I came back and I thought about, before I move on, I need to document, like, what did I accomplish there? What did I learn? What stakeholders internally does this apply to? And I created a big report, and circulated it to where it brought it upwards to where I thought it should go. But you never know how it's like. I was on with a director of engineering recently, and that topic came up, and I was able to send them that report. And I was like, I know that I just enriched like that conversation because it was ready on hand. So
I love that. I'm a big fan of that. And one of the biggest mistakes I made early in my career was, I was a big ideas guy. I would come up with ideas and try to showcase my impact. And I would message super senior people at our company very naively and get these meetings booked. And then we get on these calls and we're like, okay, like, what are we looking at? Where's the document? And I'm like, oh, I was just kind of walking through it out loud. And they're like, oh, no, like, that's not how it works. Right. So like, long story short, like, having documentation is super helpful. So I'm glad you brought that up, Dave. And you mentioned co-sell there. So let's get into that a bit and start talking about building repeatable co-sell systems, which is the topic of the boot camp that you're going to be running with the mastermind team. And I know that you often talk about the difference between activity and impact, right? So the next question for you, Dave, is how do you actually operationalize that mindset inside a co-sell motion, right? Parsing the difference between activity and impact.
Yeah. I think it has a lot to do with knowing where you're aiming, first from an alignment with the business standpoint. What are the goals of the business? What are the KPIs that are going to be measuring your team's impact on that? And because partnerships are so collaborative and co-selling is so collaborative, it also has to be mindful of those teams' goals and the other company's goals. So there's a lot to kind of consider to draw up the right play. And once you have that play in mind, then it's about knowing how to use tools like Crossbeam to filter down to the right signals. So I used one of my partners as an example, where we're going after B2B companies between 100 million and a billion revenue. Like, that's the sweet spot for the two of us. Different from other partners, but that's for that partner, it's really the sweet spot. And it overlaps really well because both of our sales teams are verticalized that way. So there's a team on both sides that align to that target. And so it was really kind of easy to keep working backwards and get more and more tactical. It's like, okay, so the filtering is down to that team and down to this industry, and then creating those reports and creating a Slack channel where all of those salespeople are in that channel, And when the report triggers a change, joint opportunities, for example, when there's a new opportunity that makes it so that there's an opportunity for both of us, an alert gets sent right into that Slack channel, and there's an immediate action on it. Both teams get enabled. So we brought our sales team, onto a team call with that sales team, so they could meet face to face and get to know each other a little bit. So it's less, more more comfortable when they get on a call together. So those are some of the things I would do.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great starting point. We're going to keep digging deeper because this is a really fun topic that is relevant for a lot of folks listening, kind of how to crawl, walk, run your way into a successful co-sell motion. So let's take the next step and scaling, co-sell partnerships without burnout. The next question, just to piggyback off what you just said, you've said that partner managers shouldn't be on every co-sell call, right? So why is that? And perhaps what's a better model?
Yeah, in my opinion, it's about scalability. And if a partner manager has to be on every call, then their book of partners is going to be really limited by that. And so at least in the experience that I've had working with ISVs, I think it's about maturity and about the partner manager progressing people, teams, and partnerships through a maturity progression, and putting most of your time in the areas where there is more need for your support. I think about I was listening to your podcast with Bob, and I know how much he loves the 2x2s. One of my favorite 2x2s is the situational leadership model, which helps model how leaders apply the right leadership style based on the stage of development and maturity of the student or whatever, the organization, whatever it is. And so I think, if you have new AEs that are new to co-selling or a new partnership, that requires direction from the partner manager. So they need to be involved. They need to be high in direction. And then as it becomes more developed, then you move into a support or coaching, high direction and high support, and then supporting, low direction, low support, and finally delegation. So if you have a really mature salesperson working a really mature partnership, then you're wasting time by being on that call. They should be empowered and entrusted to get on and execute and get value and give value. And then the partner manager should be scaling another partnership. And so hopefully, there's a plan over the course of quarters or years where partners and teams are developed to the place where they're able to run.
I love that, and big shout out to Bob Morris, CEO of Crossbeam. He absolutely loves his 2x2s, and that was a great recap of that. So I think Bob would be impressed with that recount. I love what you said about kind of enabling, say, the sales team, so you can kind of step away as a partner manager. And I think that is an underrated skill that partner managers need to start developing. Is we constantly are made to feel like we're this liaison that always needs to be kind of bringing people together to do things, which is true in the short term, right? Like, say you're trying to help your CS team refer deals to your partners, right? There's a lot of upfront hand-holding where you're bringing people together, you're beating the drum, you're building everything out. You've got to do those things in the beginning days, but eventually you need to step away. Otherwise, there's a clear ceiling that you'll run up against that you can't break through. So there's this concept of leverage that is a term that more senior people understand, of getting more output per minimizing input, but it's a really difficult skill for partner managers to develop. So let's just go back to that question, Dave, where partner managers, if you feel like you constantly need to be joining these sales calls and you just feel like you have to or things are going to fall apart, how then can you coach the sales team so they can confidently run these plays without you, the partner manager of the room, right? You talked about giving them direction. I totally buy that. But let's go one step further on the specifics part, which is how do you actually, as a partner manager, train and enable your sales team so they can confidently run these co-selling plays so the partner manager can eventually kind of step away, having the trust that things are in good shape?
Yeah. I think it's about creating repeatable playbooks and enabling the right teams with those plays. And it's not that complicated. So it's just about putting the information and presenting it in a way that shows the value to them so that they want to accept and apply that guidance, that they want to use that play because they see the value in it for them. They know where to find it. As somebody coming from Seismic, a great enablement platform, I'm a huge believer in the value of enablement tools like that help salespeople find what they need really quickly. So they're not wasting time searching for stuff. But I start every enablement session, Chris, with a statement of, this is a business partnership. This is a partnership between our company and this other company. This is not a partnership between Dave and Chris. Everyone has a role to play in this partnership. And then we share the knowledge of whatever that enablement session was about, or whether it's about the partner or something. And then there's a segment where it's like, okay, and here's the plays that are for you. If you are an AE, and I'll pull up like the Crossbeam map and kind of like zoom in. It's like, okay, for CSMs, here's the play for you. Let's zoom out there. This is what it looks like for AMs. This is where it is. If you can't remember this play, here's the enablement page where it's laid out. And so, but that's how I'd
I love
approach
that.
that.
Yeah, and I love that. It's a great approach, really mapping out what I call R&R, which is role and responsibility. I think that's great. I think you said earlier, one of the things you learned in your previous work days of like the importance of like setting a vision and articulating that in a way that's inspiring. I think that's one of the first things you've got to get right in our roles. Say you're trying to enable your sales team to really invest in co-selling. Okay, well, first you got to get them excited with the why. It's like, hey, if you invest in this and participate, you will get more deals, you'll close them faster, and they're going to close more often, higher win rate. So first you got to get them excited on the why. But to Dave's point, that's table stakes. Like you need change management SOPs built in. And that's where mapping out a stakeholder plan of like, hey, here's what I'm responsible for. And you got to show, hey, I'm responsible for a lot as a partner manager. So I'm taking on the brunt of the ownership. But here's what I'm asking you to do, AE. Here's what I'm asking you to do, CSM. And really making sure they understand who's responsible for what. And to tie this all up, I think it's so easy to communicate the shared rewards that you all can get, but you also need to share the risks as well, right? Like, hey, look, here's what I'm responsible for. Here's what you're responsible for, sales team. Here's what we stand to gain if we're successful. Everybody got it? Okay, sweet. But here's the downside as well. If you don't hold up your end of the bargain, here's what's going to happen. This whole thing's going to fall to shit, right? We're going to look bad. I'm going to look bad. I'm not going to get deal flow. Partners not going to win these deals. They're not going to be happy. They're probably going to start sending less deals, which means less deals in your pipeline, right? So I think it's so easy to get excited and rah-rah about the shared reward and kind of working together cross-functionally, but you also need to own in the shared risks, right? And I feel like if you communicate that after getting them excited about the reward, they're more likely to buy in because they're like, damn, if I don't deliver, Dave's going to be in a pickle here, right? So it just not just communicating the upside, but also communicating the downside. I find that is a strong recipe to like really get people to buy in. Does that resonate with you, Dave?
Yeah, 100%.
Sweet. Cool. Well, we're going to finish up by talking about some really exciting news, which is that Dave is joining Partnership Mastermind as a certified instructor to run his own 4-week accelerator style boot camps. Dave is a former student of the alumni, an award-winning student of the alumni, which is all the more exciting for him to join. So Dave, we're going to spend the last couple of minutes just digging into the program that you're building, who the ideal student is, and how they can get involved. The first question for you is, why was now the right moment to start teaching?
Yeah. Teaching has always been a part of my life and story. 3 younger brothers, so I hear lots of stories and even have memories of that being an important part. And that was actually my degree in college, is to be a teacher. And I have, fun fact, been a snowboarding instructor, a swim instructor, and I'm most recently a yoga instructor. I'm a certified yoga instructor. So I've always been kind of teaching, and the theme there is that I like to teach what I'm passionate about and what I'm excited about. And so when you presented this opportunity of teaching one of the boot camps for Partnership Mastermind, it was I had to weigh the cost of, hey, this is extra time and responsibility, but it also really aligns strongly with who I am,
Mm.
and that I get this opportunity to bring my passion for partnerships and my passion for teaching and
Mm.
bring those together. So,
Well, I love that, and it shows up in how you kind of operate day to day, and that was a prerequisite for who I was looking for to join our first batch of instructors. Which is, sure, you got to have the domain expertise, you got to be able to teach your students something, but really it was, hey, who has a penchant for learning, who just loves to teach and help the next generation like level up and unlock their full potential. So that was why one of the reasons you stood out as an easy candidate to kind of pursue working together with. So now let's talk about your actual program. First, give us a TLDR kind of promise for your course, right? So after 4 weeks with you in the program, what will a student be able to do better than they were, before joining your program?
yeah, after 4 weeks, a student will leave with a customized playbook that they have built both with their own company and ideas in mind, but also with the contribution of the community in the class. So there's going to be a lot of great knowledge shared and workshops together. So I'm really excited about that being a great takeaway that they'll be able to apply right away. And then I think honing in skills with account mapping and becoming more efficient as a partner manager and the execution of co-selling with ISVs.
Love that. Well, it's certainly big in demand, certainly within modern partner managers. It's a really tough skill to figure out. So lots of demand for your program, certainly, Dave, and we've already seen that. Next question is, describe your dream student, right? And ultimately, what transformation are you most excited to see, right? I think as an instructor myself, the dream student are the ones who are like super curious, self-aware, willing to humble themselves and understand where they're strong and where they're not, and are really just looking to lean in and consume every bit of what we have to offer, right? So that's kind of how I think about it. But I would love to hear from you, like, who's your dream student and what transformation are you excited to see them have?
Yeah, I like that you said curiosity. That was the first word that that I was thinking. So curiosity, collaborative, and passionate, excited about partnerships. And then I think it will be extremely valuable for anybody who is in ISV partner management. One, because they will be able to, really on day one, be applying things that they're learning to their day to day. But I also think it would be really valuable for folks that are just like a little adjacent to the ISV partner manager, like an agency partner manager that wants to come up with plays for triangulating with SIs and ISVs. I think that's a really cool play. And depending on the structure of your partner team, you might not be the person responsible, but it might be a teammate of yours, or a sales manager, or a revenue enablement manager that's thinking about how do the different teams work together and what are the playbooks. So people that are thinking about how to leverage partners within the go-to-market team, I think will all get value.
Yeah, I love that. Plenty of value to go around. And I love that you mentioned it's not, maybe not just relevant to the ISVs. I think ISVs make sense just because they typically have big customer bases. So there's just naturally that much more overlap to kind of work with, say, within Crossbeam. But really anyone who's into account mapping, looking to run referral and co-sell motions and understand best practices, I think, to Dave's point, there's something there for you. So we definitely encourage you to check out Dave's program. You can reach out directly to Dave, connect with him on LinkedIn. You can hit me up if you're interested in putting yourself or your team in, but this really is a must-have course. Fourth quarter is coming up, so this is a great opportunity to level up in time for a big fourth quarter. But listen, Dave, this was absolutely a fun conversation packed with tactical gems. Thank you for sharing your story and your playbook with the Partnership Mastermind audience. Anyone who's looking to join Dave Bootcamp, hit him up or hit me up, and we'll make sure that we get you sorted. But thank you again so much, Dave.
Thanks so much, Chris.
All right. Until next time, thanks so much, Mastermind Podcast listeners.